Kia ora koutou, no mai hoki mai ki te podcast or Flight of the Next. So welcome back everyone to the Flight of the Next podcast. We're doing a season review. We've got the team all here. There's all six of us. So welcome. I'm going to hand over to Denise. Denise is going to be taking the reins tonight. We figured that way she might have a little bit less to say. I don't know. But we'll see how we go. So Denise, the ball's in your court.
Hey, Jonathan. Nice to see you. Nice to see everyone. Alex, Danny, Ryan, Johnny Pants, and Holly all in one spot. Hey, just a quick go-round. I'm in Taupo, New Zealand. Where are you guys at?
I'm on Gadigal land in Sydney.
I'm also on Gadigal land here in Sydney.
Yep, and Te Whanganui Tara, Wellington.
I'm here in Rotorua, New Zealand, Bay of Plenty, Heartland.
And I'm in Gadigal, Sydney.
Right on. So we are all over the place down under. All right, so we're going to start off with our player of the season. Now, we each might have ideas around this. Maybe we could talk a little bit about who was in the running, but I think we all settled pretty easily on one name. Holly, tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts around player of the season.
So we did go with Mackenzie Barry in the end. I believe Mariana Speckmeyer was quite close behind. Jonathan, actually, do you want to cover what that process was? Because you were the one doing most of the tallying up, especially because we did have a lot of players that were on a lot of player of the match decisions. So how did we come about that, as well as the up-and-coming player?
Sure. So what we did was went with a 3-2-1 point scoring. So there were 22 rounds of football. Each round we would have a chat amongst ourselves and say who performed the best in that game, and then would award 3-2-1 points. The reason being that doing it that way meant that we didn't just pick the leading goal scorer at the end of the season, which is easy to do, but it doesn't necessarily, being the golden boot of the team doesn't necessarily mean that they had week in, week out the best performances for the team. So we did that throughout the season, 3-2-1 points. And as you say, Holly, when we were coming into that last week, there was literally in the very last game, Mariana and Mackenzie were right on the same amount of points. And Mariana came on in that last game as a sub and just wasn't able to pick up a point. And so Mackenzie pinched. Well, she didn't pinch it. She worked bloody hard and ended up taking out player of the season. So, yeah, that's how we got there. So it's interesting doing at the numbers across the season. You can kind of see where some players were really, really good and they got some points, and then they kind of go through a patch where maybe they weren't performing as well, and then they'd come back in. But one player who stood out to me this afternoon when I was looking at it was actually Isabel Cox. So Isabel came in kind of just over halfway through the season, and her point scoring, as we gave it based on her performance, was really good. So full credit to Mackenzie Barry, who had an outstanding season, and Mariana, who was literally just pipped at the post. So that's how that system worked.
Fantastic. And so the player of the match got 3 points. Is that correct?
Yep. So the player of the match would get 3 points, and then there'd be 2 for the second person, and 1 for the third person. And then each over the 22 rounds, the points would accumulate to a grand total. I didn't realize how long 22 rounds of football was going to be, because it's 22 weeks, which is almost half a year. It's quite a long time to keep track, but it's all worthwhile. And then the breakout player of the season Macy was up there in the top 4 right at the end, and Macy just had Macy Fraser had a stellar season, so it was pretty easy to go, yeah, Macy was the breakthrough player.
Yeah, that was pretty clear that she had a phenomenal rise this season. Became way more of a household name than, I knew she had a big Instagram following, but I had no idea that she was such a baller as well. Great job, Macy Fraser. So Alex and Holly, you gave out a lot of the player of the match awards. What was that like?
Good fun. So this is what they look like for those of you who don't follow on our social media, made by Dean, of course. I mean, we sort of physically gave them out, but the decision was made across the little corner of yellow and Flight of the Knicks chat groups. I find that players were usually pretty stoked to get them. We obviously handed them out over here in Australia to a lot of players who have just lost a game because we won all of like 2 games in Australia. But they were almost all very happy to see it. I think the only person who struggled with a smile was Mariana Speckmaier when we gave it to her. It was the Central Coast Mariners game where she might have possibly been sent off, so she didn't look that stoked. But otherwise, yeah, people are definitely appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's really great to see after a good match, especially at Porirua Park, where we were in quite good form, going up to them after a match, after when they're signing all the kids' signatures and stuff like that. And, it looks like they enjoy it and they're pretty happy to get them, or I hope they're happy to get the Player of the Match awards, and especially when you give it to a young player. Like I remember giving it to Bree and to Liz, like the entire team just crowds around them and gives them hugs. And yeah, it's really great to see.
Oh, it makes my little Nick's heart patter. That's cute. I'm really, that was a really nice collaboration with Little Corner of Yellow. And, just a really nice thing to do with these players. They work so hard. And every match, no matter win, lose, tie, we always gave out a player of the match. That was really cool. So with us tonight, we have Ryan of Impetus. Ryan, hey. What was that like writing for Impetus all season about the Wellington Phoenix?
Absolutely loved it. It's again, doing the press conferences just in general. Like, I love writing up press conferences and that, but writing up Wellington's press conferences was a real highlight because for obvious reasons, you could really go through the progression of the season and hearing like what was said, what was asked, and in preparation for the upcoming matches or the upcoming match and that. And yeah, a lot of interesting bits of information from every player that I covered in those press conferences.
It was quite a season. I mean, any of you, Danny, how would you describe like the whole season? Like if you had to take us through a general timeline, I mean, what would you say?
It's a strange one because you start off with certain expectations, and then as things happen, your expectations change. And so how you feel at the end of the season is very different to how you think you would have felt at the end of the season had you given them that result. So if you'd have told me the start of the season would finish 8th, just miss out on the playoffs, I'd have bitten your hand off for that. I would have been really happy with that. But because we saw early in the season how well we could play and the kind of results we could get against more established teams, we actually got really quite disappointed and depressed sort of through that middle patch when we weren't doing well, and it was like quite despairing. What can we do to pull out of this? How can we change things? What's going to happen? When really, if we looked at our points tally, that was probably as good, if not better, than we could have expected to. So it's a little bit weird, and having it at the end of the season when we didn't make the 6th, I was really quite disappointed. We finished off with a good performance, and it took a little while to actually rearrange my expectations and look back over the season as a whole and say, you know what, that was a good season. This was sort of the first season where we've actually played with a proper team. We've had the same conditions as the other teams. We've been able to get visa players in. It's just home and away. But we sort of came of age, and I think we really showed we belonged in this league, and that, to me, would make me really happy. I'm pretty looking forward to next season even more.
Yeah, let's just take a moment and talk about the strange arc of the season.
Just looping back to the player of the match thing and talking about the strange arc of the season, getting it out there nice and early. Chloe Knott got player of the match at the game at Go Media Stadium, and that was on the Saturday before she left the team, which sent the team into a tailspin. So 2 things there. One, Chloe was fantastic, and she got the player of the match. Second thing was that point in time when Chloe exited was when the team just came off the rails a bit. But then, we met, I think the introduction of Cox later on managed to get us back on track again. But I agree. We Dean and I were both saying Knicks at 6, and if we had been 6, we would be absolutely fizzing and bouncing off the walls. But we just fell that little bit short. It's like, what if only?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Chloe Knott thing was weird. We still don't know really the ins and outs of what happened. It was weird. I mean, for a player just to call it quits in the middle of the season, playing, and someone who has led the team quite a bit and was an original player. And I do think, they went to Australia quite a bit and they didn't win. And I don't know if the two came together or not. And, as Danny said, Cox came in and really gave us a lift, but we needed a lift because that was not going well. That part of that trough of the season, it was like an equalizer set where the midtones were like, whoa, that wasn't very good. Anyone else about just the overall arc of the season?
I mean, you're right in saying the Chloe Knott thing was seemed to coincide with the dip in form, but it was also we lost Wisniewski to an injury, and we just seemed to lose our Longo hadn't really come in then yet, so we really just missed our midfield. I don't think it was, although Chloe Knott was an excellent player, we definitely missed her. I think the fact that we just lost our entire midfield, never really got that going. I don't think we ever really found it again very well until maybe towards the end when we started having the Wynnum, Fraser, Taylor 3, if you like. And I think that's what cost us this season, to be honest. If either Chloe Knott had stayed or Wisniewski hadn't done her ACL, or maybe if Longo had come in earlier, or we just got that balance in midfield, I think we would have made the finals quite easily. So I think that's where I think we missed out, and I think that's where we need to look to strengthen for next season.
I think I do agree that we don't. The Chloe Knott thing does matter, but when you look across the home and away results, I don't think that she had quite necessarily as big of an impact as maybe we assume, as much as that was probably disruptive. I think losing Wiz, and more particularly, I think it's sort of underrated is how important Marisa Vandermeer is. So Paul McBarry had quite a few different centre-back pairings over the season. So she had Marisa, and that was probably the magic duo. She had Bex Lake, she had Tiana Jaber, she had quite a few people I think there was disruption there that also mattered. But I think more than anything, it's really that roller coaster of home and away. If, for example, if we had only taken into account our home results for the league, we'd be second. Our away results only would have us second to last. That's how stark that was. And what added to the roller coaster nature of those losses as well is that we dropped 14 points across the season from winning positions. 14 points where we were winning, and then it usually came out as a loss. I think there was one that it wound up being a draw. That's incredibly stark, and it did feel very exhausting to have that happen.
Did the team lack any leaders? What do you think about the leadership on the team? Anyone?
I think you had a bit of there were a lot of changes. I feel like perhaps Longo was supposed to be the on-field leader, but she was injured a lot. I think Riley Foster stepped up and was a leader at the back. She was very, very loud. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe we did lack a leader sometimes when we were facing those losses, where we perhaps could have still gotten something out of the game.
Yeah, I think in moments like that, when you drop points from a winning position, or if you're on such a long losing streak away from home, it kind of calls for the experienced players to step up and show the team. I don't know necessarily how it's done, but just guide the team through it. Let them know that it's okay to not have so good games every now and then, and just guide the team through that consistency that you do really want to see in a football team. And I think the lack of experience that we had, it kind of showed, the two kind of only experienced players I can think of, Flea and Riley Foster. And Flea was out for big parts of the season, and Riley Foster's all the way down at the back of the field in goal. So when you're playing, in midfield, or even a centre back that's super, super experienced, would be so helpful. And I think it could have changed our season.
Ryan, do you have any just thoughts a little bit more about leadership and, what happened in the middle of the season where we lost a lot?
See, it's kind of, now hear me on this, it's kind of reminiscent of Adelaide last season, how they started the season. They started off red hot, and I think they only lost like one game in the first 5. And then the match where they won against Wellington, for some reason, then spiraled their season into when they really looked like they could have been like making finals. And that, see, it's an interesting thing, because it's the fact that the dropping of 14 points from winning positions is something that, like, if you're trying to make a finals charge, then you can't really be having that occurring or as much. And there's so many factors to it in that, of like, is it the travel? Is it the team cohesion? This, that, and the other. So I don't think there's like one specific issue that's the only issue. If there was, there's a million other things. And that, at least the season ended well enough, and that, but it's that mid-season point that very defining of the campaign. And as for the leaders, see, it didn't help that Longo was injured for quite a few periods of the season, and obviously with Chloe, that whole, with her exit being a vice captain leaving the club, then that obviously put a hole in terms of the leadership factor at that time. But yeah, I mean, I think they had leaders in that, but I feel like how they went into the season, they didn't end it the way they probably would have wanted from a leadership point of view.
Yeah, I think who evolved as the leaders on the team?
See, I feel obviously Michaela Foster, obviously she was the vice captain this season, or one of the vice captains, so she was by already in a leadership role and developed in that regard. I feel Riley in a way, obviously from the way she was in between the sticks. And then I have to say, I believe Mackenzie Barry, in my opinion, felt like a leader in the back line.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk about who we have retained, who's coming back first. So let's review that. Who wants to talk about that? Let's see. I'll read the names. We have Mackenzie Barry coming back. We have Zoe Meakin. Macy Frazier is signed till 2026. Daisy Brazendale until 2026 as well. Manaya Elliott, I believe, I'm not sure of her status, possibly 2026 as well. And Olivia Ingham till 2026. So those are people who we know are coming back. We also know one person who isn't coming back, and that's Haley Davidson. She was a contract player. She was from the United States. She took that pretty hard. Anyone want to talk about that?
I think, well, in one way, it's a good sign that she was disappointed. It shows that she wanted to stay. She's enjoyed the club culture at Wellington, and she enjoyed playing in the A-League, and she could see that playing in the A-League is good for her career. Even though, she'll probably go overseas and she'll play somewhere else. So in that respect, I think that was nice to see. Also, nice to see, and this is a bit harsh, is that the club are ruthless enough to say, you've done a perfectly good job, but we're going to look for something better. I mean, again, don't want to be too critical. I thought Hayley Davison was perfectly acceptable in her role, and I thought she did well. But I would expect a Visa player to be probably one of the best players in the team. I think we could probably fill her position with some Kiwis and look for something else. So it was harsh and it was ruthless by the club, but in a way, I think that's probably good. As I say, I have no problem with Hayley Davison at all as a player. I thought she was perfectly fine, and she played most of the matches, and she did a good job. But I think we can and we probably should look for a bit of an upgrade there.
I think that's actually the case with Visa players, because there's kind of a higher standard applied to them. That's because they're taking up a Visa spot, and those are limited, but also because they command a higher salary usually. So I think that is interesting to think through. This is the first year we've had Visa players, which has been really exciting for us. And I think some of them have performed okay, but maybe not well enough to be valued as a Visa spot and getting paid that much. And then we've had some others who've been bloody brilliant and would have back in a heartbeat. I think Mariana Speckmaier is someone I'd have back in a heartbeat, and it sounds like she'd be quite keen to stay, which is good news. She was obviously our golden boot for the season on 10 goals. Incredible.
Would you like to run down some of the stats of the Visa players?
I will. So first and foremost, Hope Breslin played every match, and I believe I heard this in the coverage of the final match of the season. She was one of, if not the only player that played in every single match for the Phoenix this season. So 22 matches played, 17 started, 2 goals scored, 3 assists. Then Hayley Davison played 21 matches, started 18 of those, 5 clean sheets, which I was trying to find that information as well, and I feel like defense would count with a clean sheet in that regard, but not in the conventional sense of a goalkeeper. Mariana Speckmaier, 21 matches played, 18 started, 10 goals scored, top scorer for the club this season, 2 assists. Riley Foster, 19 matches played and started as well. So she started and played all of the 19 matches she was a part of. 3 clean sheets. And then Isabel Cox, 13 matches played, 10 matches started, 3 goals scored, 3 assists.
Okay, everyone. If you had to keep 2 Visa players, which 2 would you keep? Danny?
Isabel Cox and Mariana Speckmaier. I think that's pretty simple. Isabel Cox, I think, is a class above almost everybody in the A-League. I think she's a superb player. I don't think... My only criticism of her is we don't involve her enough. I don't think we should be playing her too far wide. I think we should be playing her more centrally, because the more she gets a ball, the more things happen. And Mariana Speckmaier scored 10 goals in 20 games. Goal scoring is not something you can teach. It just happens, and she just scores goals. Again, as we said, Visa player needs to do something probably that a domestic player can't, and I think those 2 are clearly above whatever we can get from a domestic player. So, yeah, Cox and Speckmaier for me.
Alex?
Yep, I agree fully, especially on Isabella Cox. She's been a complete revelation since she came in, probably our best player in more than a few games. And Mariana Speckmaier, she's pretty consistent up the top. There's only been probably two or three chances that she should have scored that she didn't score. I think if we build on her performances this season and kind of pair her with other players up the top, she could turn into even a golden boot contending striker.
Holly?
I think I mentioned Mariana. Izzy as well. I think she's probably on the expensive side. I imagine she's probably the most expensive of our Visa players, and I think that she's probably got a lot of offers. So I think we might struggle to keep her. I think a really good question is Riley Foster, because I just watched through all of the highlights of all of the games, and she's put up some incredible saves. she's been fantastic. I think the question for us has sort of been, there's sometimes been a sense that Bree Edwards is just as good, and she's not a visa player. So if we kept Riley, I'd be okay with that. We need to keep either Riley or Bree, and I don't know whether we will keep Bree because she barely played, and I'd be pretty unhappy and would probably be fielding other offers if I was Bree. I thought that about last season too, so...
Yep. So from me, it would be, I agree with what's been said. I think Isabel and Mariana. Isabel, her physicality, she's taller than a lot of players, and she's able, like her ability to spin on the ball and just cut around defenders is really good. Mariana, maybe we could adopt her into the Ferns, and or maybe she could coach some of our Ferns how to score goals, but that's a different podcast. But there were a few times where it was kind of funny because Mariana was absolutely Mariana towards the end of the season, her and Mickey Robertson, Mariana was expecting the ball or expecting Mickey to be somewhere, and Mickey wasn't there. And then there's, Mariana's going, "Oi!" as you expect from a leader, and Mickey's like, "Well, I wasn't there, so tough luck." There was some, just those fun little bits and pieces there, but it just really shows the level of professionalism, just that mentality that those import players bring. So yeah, different for me would be Isabel and Mariana. Hope Breslin, yeah, maybe, as you say, she played a lot of games. Don't know, Riley Foster, perhaps. There were questions about Riley's ability to, getting the ball away on kicks, actually to players and players' feet. Some of that accuracy, but I mean that can be improved on. But teaching someone how to save some of those goals like she did, that's a whole different. She's on a different level there. So yeah, that's it from me.
And Ryan, do you have a thought on this?
If you keep Speckmeyer on, I feel like she's just going to go even better, I feel. And in regards to Riley, I thought she was quite good. And that obviously not perfect, but no one is perfect. And I feel like with another season at the club, I feel like if you can sort of what's the way? If some of those mistakes can be eradicated, and that I feel like it'd be great to keep her on. But obviously, it's not going to be a perfect season next season. But I feel like if with another season back from the car accident that she was involved in, playing at the professional level again, then I feel like it will really pay off for next season if you keep her on.
I just want to talk about the goalkeepers. So Riley Foster and Bree Edwards off contract this season. Holly, you said you'd probably keep Riley. If I was the coach, I probably wouldn't automatically re-sign her, but I wouldn't be too upset if the club did. I just think they've got to have a good think about it, because this season we kind of went the two number ones approach. We've got Riley Foster and Brianna Edwards, who are both good enough to be the number one goalkeeper for the Wellington Phoenix. And Brianna Edwards did get a few games playing time, because Riley Foster, it's clear that she's not fully recovered from her car crash yet. Obviously, she's a really talented keeper, especially with her shot stopping. But physically, there is some way to go. And I think kind of consistency in the club you play at and the training grounds you train at, and the physio, the strength and conditioning staff, I think consistency in that regards will help her overcome those barriers and get physically fitter, physically stronger. But I do think if we keep her on after this season, we will need to sign another keeper. I'm not sure if Brianna Edwards is going to be willing to re-sign. If we could sign them both, I'd do that in a heartbeat. But the question is, if we sign Riley Foster, we also need to sign another keeper, and signing them to be what you'd call your traditional number two keeper. But if they're good enough to be a number one keeper, I'm not sure how well that's going to go with convincing them to do that. I'm pretty sure Bree was pretty relaxed in that regard. Good. It's good to keep her consistency at the club, being at the club for a long time through the academy, even staying with the same goalkeeping coaches. I'm sure that would have had an effect on her decision to stay at the club. But if we can get 2 number 1 goalkeepers again, I'm fine to keep Riley Foster.
I'd agree with Alex there. I'd happy toss up between Riley Foster or Brie Edwards, as long as we keep one of them. I think the one thing possibly on Foster's account is she seems to be, we talked about being a leader, she certainly seems to be quite loud, she seems to be a character around the club. And how important is that for a club that has a lot of younger players there? She seems to be well liked, and I don't know, not in the club, but that could be something which possibly goes in her favour to retaining her over perhaps saying, okay, well we've got Brie Edwards, she's just as good, technically as good a keeper. So, and that might be important again to have leaders in the club. And just one other thing which Ryan sort of touched on, but also Paul Temple, I think it was Paul Temple said in their end of season talk, is with regards to the visa players, a lot of these players were not big names at their previous clubs. They're often bit part players at their previous clubs, which is why, sadly, which is why they've come to the A-League and come to Wellington. And they've come here having scored, as in Speckman, maybe one professional goal, or maybe, just spent the vast majority of their seasons on the sidelines, coming on here and there. And they've come here and they're expected to be the best players in the club. And, the marketing right up there, the faces of the club, and be the best players. And that's quite a lot of pressure for someone to do it as a change of status for them, to come over here and expect it, and probably knowing that they're paid better than the rest of the squad as well. They'll be aware of that, and to do that and have that pressure on them, it's quite interesting. It's a pressure that the other players probably don't have, and I think most of them have dealt with that quite well. But I could see how it might have an effect on something.
Okay, Jonathan, go for it.
I was just going to just build on what Danny just said, and I think with Riley Foster, when you're an American and you move to New Zealand, there are some subtle differences between the culture and the way that we talk to each other and so on. So I think perhaps next season, if we give Riley a year, that she's kind of come into the country now, she's gotten used to the Wellington culture and a bit more how we kind of operate. So I think if we could keep Riley for another year, I think her performances and her leadership on the team would accelerate even more. Because, Kiwis are a bit different. We're a bit sensitive. We can be a bit kind of, oh, well, that's a bit rough. That's a bit honest. But I think, everyone, it takes a bit of time and you get used to it. And you're like, you can, yeah. So I think if Riley were to stay, I think she would have a second season would be fantastic. But full disclosure, I would love Brie to stay, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, we all have a soft spot for Brie. I mean, she's a remarkable human being, and really cool. She's a young, very proud, out gay woman on the team, and she's a kick-ass goalie, and she has a huge future in this country. So we're massive fans. And Riley, by the way, is Canadian. You're killing me, Jonathan. All those qualities that you think are brash and American, well, she picked up in Canada, and she's pretty cool. And she's gone through a lot, and she has been featured quite a bit in the league. She had a horrible game, and she was still like player of the month. She had a good sort of karma about her in the league, particularly with her past. So, it'll be very, very interesting to see which person the Knicks keep, because I don't see them keeping both of them. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I think Brie is confident, and she's like a young racehorse who is ready at the gates. And if they say, hey, you got to fight it out again with this, seasoned veteran next to you, I'm not sure what she's going to do. I mean, I might find another race. So on that topic of who would you keep, I mean, there's a lot of names on this list that are not signed. I'm just going to highlight a few: Mickey Foster, Kate Taylor, Emma Main, Rebecca Lake, Annalie Longo, Alyssa Winham, Marissa Vanderveer, Mickey Robertson. I thought she was signed. Grace Wisniewski. I mean, there's just a whole heck of them, a lot of them. If you had 3 people to sign out of that list, or out of that list, who would you sign? Who would you keep? And we talked about, we grabbed 2 international players. So I'm kind of, a lot of you put in for who would you sign at least one international player. So I'm going to get you to grab 3 sort of players that are either from Australia or New Zealand. Most of those names are from New Zealand. And who would you keep? Jonathan, who would you keep?
I would be signing, and my number 1 signing would be young Amy Daniele, the goalkeeper. She came in and played. She came in and had a game where I think it was Foster was injured or something, and young Amy came on, and she was great. Like, she was, I mean, she's only young, but she was like, like, she brought the heat. I'm like, this kid is cool. I like her. Second player I would definitely bring back would be Marisa Vandermeer. We really, Marisa is, she's a talent in that back four. In that back four line. And then the third player going from the Kiwis, Kate Taylor. And Kate, because she's really growing into that holding midfield role, that that deep defending role. She's growing into it. I caught up with her halfway through the season. I was like, "How's the new job?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm getting used to it. It's going okay." So those would be my 3. Plus, Kate's parents are really cool. So just a little shout out to the family there. A little bit of bias.
Alex?
Yeah, I've got my 3 players. So first on the list, Isabel Cox. I'm not sure if I heard you properly, but she is a foreigner. I'd love to keep her. We expressed doubts if she's going to stay. Financial constraints and whatnot. The other two Kiwis, Emma Main, Kate Taylor. Emma Main, I reckon she's brilliant. I reckon she's a really understated part of this Wellington Phoenix teams. The runs she makes can be really smart at times. I was watching the Ferns play Thailand yesterday. It was a 0-0 draw. And at times our front line was just completely static. It was like I was sitting pretty much straight in front of, I was in a perfect position to see it, and at times it was just like 5 attackers just completely lined up, not moving at all, and it's really hard to break through a back line when you do that. So I think Emma Main offers something different in that regard. And then the third player is Kate Taylor. I think she's pretty much a rock at the back. Her and Mac Barry in her first 2 seasons was a really great centre back pairing. We saw her kind of push up into midfield a bit this season, where she played really well. I think she offered something different to all of our existing attackers. And I think kind of keeping that consistency, we've already got Mac Barry signed on for the next season. Keeping Mac and Kate Taylor signed on for the next season it's a first step.
So, obviously there's some people who would be top of the list that are already signed, like Mac Barry and Macy Fraser. And I've mentioned the visa players like Cox and Speckmeyer. I also agree Emma Main would be huge, and Kate Taylor as well, to just keep that stability in the defence with Kate and Mac. Marisa Vandermeer would be great to have her back as well. One person that hasn't been mentioned is Mickey Foster. She blew everyone out of the water last season, cleaned up all of the awards, was absolutely player of the season. She's not been as prominent this season. I think it's because we're actually just used to her playing at a high standard. I'm not too sure, but I wouldn't want to lose Mickey Foster, because that's someone who's really, really good with a dead ball. And this being an aside, I think the men have struggled without Clayton Lewis this season, and that's had a big effect on the amount of goals that we've been able to score in the men's team. And I think we would face having a similar issue if we were to lose our star dead ball taker, Mickey Foster. That was more than 3, but whatever.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit like Holly. I can't choose just 3. We've only signed 6, and then if we have 2 internationals, that's 8. So another 3 is only going to give us 11. It doesn't give us a match squad. So this is the first 3 I would sign, but I think there's probably more from that long list that I'd still quite happily take back. But if we're cutting it down to 3, I think, Marisa Vandermeer, as long as she'll be fit and recovered by the time the new season starts. Her and Mac Barry at the back was looked to be an excellent foundation. Obviously, only lasted a couple of games, unfortunately, but I think that would be a good foundation to build a team upon going forward. So I would definitely keep her. And Kate Taylor, I think. That's with my Phoenix hat on. I would like to see Kate Taylor there, and again to build into that midfield role because we really need that. With my New Zealand football hat on, I would probably say it'd be good to see Kate Taylor go overseas and grow her game that way. I think she's probably more than capable of doing a job somewhere, and I think it'll probably be good for her to go, but I hope she doesn't, and I hope she does. Both things can be true at the same time. And then finally, again, Emma Main. I think she's just on the cusp of being a really, really good player. Her go-forward attitude is just awesome. She's always heading for goal. Doesn't matter what she's doing, with great energy from first minute to the 90th minute. And she just seems to be missing out that final touch that goes slightly wide, hits a bar, doesn't get past that very last player. And if she could just get that final 5% of a game, she would be awesome. She reminds me a bit, I don't know, like to do comparison, but she reminds me a bit of Ben Old last season from the men's team, when he was like, he looked like he had all the goods, but he wasn't really contributing everything to a game. And then this season, something's clicked, or he's just developed a bit, and he's a star player in the team. And I think Emma Main could be that next season for the Phoenix. I could see her, scoring a lot of goals and being, first name on the score sheet.
I think just a button there about Emma Main. The comparison with Ben Old is not too bad because one of the issues with Ben Old was he was injured. One of the issues with Emma Main this season, she actually had long COVID. So she told me that in the away Adelaide game, which she scored the goal in the first half, she came off and her heart was beating so quickly that they almost took her to the hospital. So she had a really bad COVID bout, and I think that really put an effect on her season. She still scored 5 goals though. So yeah, she's got a lot. There's a lot more potential there for her, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's so hard to whittle it down to just 3 because of how many good players that are off contract. But yeah, Kate has to be re-signed, I feel she's always been an important player, but I feel like this season, for me personally, I felt she really came into her own even more. And I felt her presence on the pitch really was important to how the season went. Even though didn't make finals, her being on the pitch was really, very, very important. And keeping her on next year and next season will be very important for the finals charge. Yeah, Emma Main has to be as well. I mean, already knew that she would, that you had someone good at the club from when she had the cameo appearances last season and how well she went to then get that professional contract. And yeah, I think even with having long COVID, I think she was still one of the club's best players and really, really played well. And then I think the last match of the season, she, had, I feel, her best match of the season and really emphatically put out a statement saying to be re-signed for next season. And Marissa Vandermeer, I was gutted. I'm not sure I can speak for everyone here. I was gutted when she was out for the rest of the season whilst on New Zealand. Because again, I thought she was one of the club's best players last season, and she was great this season for the amount of time she was on. And it's similar thing to Kate Taylor. I feel like you keeping Vandermeer will be very important towards the finals charge for next season. I think doesn't matter about Vandermeer's age. It doesn't even really matter about the majority of the ages of any of the players because it's such a young squad for the most part. That Vandermeer has maturity well beyond her years, just like with Kate Taylor, just like with Mackenzie Barry, and many, many, many others. So yeah, I think having Vandermeer there next season is a must.
So I'm going to bring in my 2 cents. I'm going to also say Emma Main. Wow. Main train. That was awesome. Also Taylor, Foster. And I'm going to say 2 fun names. 2 names that I love people I just love watching. So on the pitch, Mickey Robertson, and then it's on my back here. I think Grace Jolly technically is someone you could bring back to the Knicks. She did not have a great time over in Perth, but I love watching her on the pitch.
No one's mentioned Zoe McMeekin. I thought you were going to say most exciting people on the pitch, and you were going to say Zoe McMeekin. Again, it's too hard to pick, isn't it? I'd love to see. Oh wait, Zoe's already been signed.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my bad. Zoe has already been signed, so she was out of that conversation.
I love it when Zoe just stuffs people with her feet. You know, like she just goes up and challenges them, and almost the ball stops because she just runs right into them with her feet. She's really, really fun to watch on the pitch. So
I want to put my 2 cents in there with McMeekin. Honestly, how there were times in the season, right, where having McMeekin was the best thing, in my opinion, at the very least. The fact that last season didn't get a lot of game time and that, but then this season when that first moment came for her to appear, she took it with open arms and just ran with it, and really, honestly, she transformed into this absolutely brilliant football. She was already good, I feel, to begin with, but I feel like she just went that other level, and having that aggressive presence. I think I even said when I was writing up one of the presses that I feel like, and you might agree or not, I feel like she, because of how she was going through the season, I felt like she had inherited the role that Izzy Gomez had in the first season. I feel, in terms of being that aggressive player, being that player that sort of, took no crap, I feel, and sort of, going hard and that. But in McMeekin's case, less yellow cards. Again, maybe I'm not accurate when I say that, but I mean that's just what I said when I was writing up one of the McMeekin's presses, that I felt that she'd inherited that role that someone like Izzy Gomez had in the first season of the club.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Ryan. Zoe's cool. I have a lot of time for Zoe. Yeah, but there's a couple of names that we haven't mentioned, and I think we just need to kind of drop them in here. And one, I think, is Wisniewski, who, played a few games and then went down with a ruptured ACL. It's not that we wouldn't have the players that we haven't mentioned back. It's just kind of, if we're only picking 3, it is a bit hard. And then the other one is Alyssa Wynnum, who has been with the club now for 3 years. And it's kind of would love to have her back, but maybe, as Danny said before, with Kate, maybe an opportunity elsewhere might help her to grow her game. Being in a different environment with a different team. If there's one player that I would get back, who may not be in the starting lineup, but I thought was fantastic, and that's Tiana Jaber. Shout out to Tiana and her mum, because her mum outbid me on buying the rainbow jersey at the end of the year. But I thought Jaber came in and slotted into that back full well. So if we were looking for a backup kind of defender who's just maybe not in the top 3, maybe in the top 4, top 5, that I think Jay would be good. But as we say, we have so much quality in the team. It's hard to go, 1, 2, 3. So, yeah.
How about those Pride jerseys? I mean, did any of us expect, the prices that were going down for those?
I mean, I was sort of a bit disappointed that Mac Barry didn't get that extra, $46 or whatever it was to get to 1,000, but it doesn't actually surprise me at all. It helps that the jerseys were really, really nice as well. And, our women's team are really coming into the national conscience, and I thought they're always driven up a little bit by people's mums and dads. But, that was beautiful to see. We raised a heap of money for Inside Out.
Yeah, very cool. Anyone get your hands on any of them?
I mean, I was tempted, but I mean, didn't have deep enough pockets to even attempt to go and bid for one. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing to see just how much they were going for. And I think that's a testament to I think the club, the players, and in fact the organization. that it was going for as well.
I think that's a little bit as we talked about before. There's been plenty of games where we've gone ahead and we haven't managed to hold on. And we talked about that. Is that a lack of leadership? Is that a lack of control in the field? I'm not sure. But there was plenty of away games where we'd score the first goal and we go, okay, we're going to lose 2-1. We did, game after game. Whereas maybe a more experienced team, maybe a savvier team would go, okay, you could equalise against us, but I'm not going to let you get that winning goal. We'd have got, we'd have got 2 or 3 of those away losses would have been draws, and they should have been on the balance of play, but we let them through, and we had that bad run where we just seemed to lose everything 2-1. So I think it was part of that problem. We're not sure totally why that problem is, but that was part of the problem there. We were just not very good at closing games out.
So one of the key differences, and we are talking about the losses, if we think back to the 22-23 season where we came out and got blown off the park 4-0, 5-0, 4-0, I think it was, in a row. And then this year it was kind of like 2-1, 1-0, somewhere like those sorts of numbers. Yes, we lost, but the losses were so much easier to take because at least we were putting up a fight, which was so good to see. What if we had have had some draws? Because I think we're only, maybe 1 or 2 points outside making that final 6. So 1 or 2 draws could have put us in contention for finals football. So, yeah, it's that mentality. We're ahead. We're going to stay there and we're not going to let them score. You just got to really keep that aggression and the foot on the throat, it's a mentality and it's also a maturity thing. And I think the team is maturing into that. And hopefully we see more of it next season.
So where would you weave coaching into all of this discussion? I mean, we've heard from Paul Temple, it's a results-based game, that we need, at some point to be evaluated on the wins and losses. This is the first time in this kind of podcast we have where we're not talking about should the coach stay or not. I mean, the coach has a 2-year contract. He has a longer runway than the past 2 coaches. And how would you evaluate this first year of his coaching?
So, home, awesome. Second in the league. Away, pretty crap at times. Pretty crap most of the times. Second to last on the table for those results. So, I don't know what's causing our inability to win. We won round 2 away, and then we did not win away again until round 19. And I know some of that might be travel, but there was the spread of games where we played Sydney FC, went straight to Brisbane, and then came straight back down to Sydney. So we had 3 matches where we stayed here in the country in a row, and that didn't seem to help either. So something has to change, and I don't know what it is that has to change on that count. I really like Temps. I think he's done some really good things, but somehow this problem has to be solved. I don't know who by, I don't know how, but it's got to change. Otherwise, we're just going to have the same issue next season.
I think it's just a thing, that the team will learn with age. It took the men quite a while to learn how to win away in Australia as well, and I think it will take the women long as well. One thing that doesn't really go in our favour is the length of contracts that get handed out in women's football. Usually they're quite short, 1 year, 2 year contracts, which means there's a lot of turnover in the squad in women's football. And if you're thinking there's a few players that stick around for 5 years, 5-6 years or something, hopefully they can pass the strategies that they've found that help them when they're going overseas, so they can help the rest of the squad learn how to perform overseas in Australia. But if we don't have those players stick around, it might take a lot longer. It might be a kind of a coaching thing. Paul Temple, it's his first season as a head coach. I'm sure he would have learned a lot from the season. Hopefully he's got some ideas on how to fix that. But overall, I think it's just a thing that'll come with age.
So echoing what you were saying, Alex, in terms like the players like with the short-term contracts and all that, the beauty of at least what I deem to be the Wellington Phoenix rule is that going into this season, no longer restricted of the amount that you needed of Australian players and New Zealand players, that the Australian and New Zealand players were deemed as domestic players. So I feel like, in a way, honestly, anyone that's off contract in the league in particular, I feel like if you can sell them the dream and sell them what it means to be like, if you come here, your role in this and what you can do in that, if you can sell the dream, honestly, anyone and everyone could potentially come. And I say could because there'll be some people that like you simply won't be able to get, even if you say this, that, and promise like you da 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 da. It's But yeah, the fact that like the domestic players in New Zealand, it's now like Australia and New Zealand in that regard, and there's no restrictions with that, really helps. That if let's say the majority of the players that are off contract we can't keep, and that, then the beauty of who's off contract at other clubs, and that an Australian or New Zealand players, if we can give them a good enough deal and blueprint of what you can do at the Phoenix, then, the possibilities are endless.
I guess my take on the coaching, I would say for Temple, overall, the seasons is a pass. We've probably over... I mean, I'm sure they were trying to make the finals. That was probably their goal. We just missed out on that, but I don't think everyone would be too disappointed. We certainly started off well, and I think we had a particular style, what they call the small ball, and that looked really good. And we, as a team, we looked really good playing that, and we had our own style until the wheels sort of fell off for the various reasons that we've discussed. And I think this is where Paul Temple will look back and go, okay, I probably should have done a bit better, because he didn't seem to know his best 11. We were changing week on, week out. Some of that was circumstances, injury as well. But we seemed to lose our style. We seemed to lose our small ball. We didn't have consistent formations or players each week. And I think he said himself he wasn't sure what to do to arrest the slide that we'd done. And I don't think we got out of that funk, if you like, deliberately. I think it just sort of happened. It just clicked for whatever reason. And we got a couple more results and things came back. So as Alex and Holly have said, there's certainly something to look at for next season. How can we stop that happening again? I mean, for me, it would probably be a more consistent selection, as in know your first 11 and play them as much as you can, and maybe more consistently sticking to your style. We always look best when we were playing short passing through the thirds of the pitches. That comes with confidence. You can have confidence in your own ability and confidence of the ability of your teammate who you're going to give the ball to. Even if it looks like they're in a difficult position with people around them, you've got to have the confidence that they can get that ball out to someone else. And, when we did that, we looked good. I think when we stopped doing that, we stopped being so good and we started getting beaten. So definitely I would keep Temple on for next season. I mean, he's under contract. I'm sure he would have learned a lot. And, I hope we can re-sign probably quite a large amount of the squad that we've had this year, because I think that squad is more than capable of getting us into the finals.
I'm in agreement with you there, Danny. I think the style of play, and I was reflecting on how we went last year when we kept on trying to do that, playing out from the back, which didn't work well at all for us. And, watching the style of play this year, particularly with our centre backs are playing further forward, they're connecting with the wing backs, like just the style of play, the tempo. It was just a lot more enjoyable, even as a fan, as a supporter to watch. And so from that point of view, let's keep doing what we're doing. On the flip side, it was interesting to hear Gilly, who's the head of football, saying that actually, what the club needs to figure out is what to do off the field. So Temps Paul Temple's done a really good job of coaching. They've made some great strides. They were playing positive football. But it's more about how can we support the players when for all the things that aren't on the pitch. And there's a whole lot. That's a whole nother conversation and podcast in itself. But it'll be interesting to see how we go next season. I'm looking forward to it. Denise, how did you rate him?
Yeah, to riff off what you said, I believe Lily Alfred felt is going to come on next year. Let's hope that's still a go, and look after the players, to be part of the it's kind of a new position on a lot of women's teams. It's like player welfare position. And it's kind of like someone who understands and anticipates some of these things that go on before they get kind of out of control. Like Lily might say, hey, beds in this hotel suck. No one's getting any sleep. Like, we got to get these people to bed at 9:00, not 11:00. These meetings need to be shorter. The things that players need, I think, need to be anticipated to get these wins in Australia. This is just a gut instinct. I don't really know what I'm talking about with that, but it's a gut instinct that, that the talent was there, the coaching philosophy was there, but something just kind of, clogged up. Yes, we lost Wiz, we lost a lot, some key players. I would also just add, while I'm here talking, is that I would like them to continue to recruit internationally. I think having these international players gave them great gust of wind. And I would like to see more gusts of wind come into this team, whether we can keep them for one or more seasons. They are the difference makers in the league.
As you've mentioned, non-coaching staff, like a position that Lily Alford has stepped into, a big shout out to all of the people who go and do the things behind the scenes, whether that's actually technically on the field, like the doctor and the physio. Wendy, the team manager, works tirelessly to get everyone where they need to be on time. All of the backroom staff that make match day happen, or make sure that players get played, or give direction to how the club runs. So I do want to acknowledge all of those people behind the players and the coaches in the club, because that it doesn't happen on the field without them.
Hey, can you imagine doing the taxes of a footballer, having to work in all these different locations? Like, how is Mariana Speckmeyer going to do her taxes?
I think there are specialist tax advisors for this kind of thing. But yeah, it's a lot of juggling. And it's a lot, especially playing internationally, the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes just to get things, ready to go to actually kick a ball. It's huge. Ryan, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I want to put my 2 cents in terms of Temps this season. I think he was great, to be fair. I think the brand of football that he was able to have the players showcase in that, I felt was really, really brought another bit of energy, and much needed energy amongst the playing group. And I feel like that played a really big part in terms of how they went this season and how they performed in that regard. I think as well, while it wasn't perfect, and yeah, again, not everyone's perfect, as I said earlier in this, I feel like if you keep the faith in his system, and I feel like if you recruit well and he recruits well and all that, I feel like you keep the faith, then finals isn't out of the question for next season if you keep that faith in what he has with his brand of football and what he wants his players to provide on the pitch.
I just kind of worked it out. I reckon that would be, on average, it would take 10 hours of travel time for the average player when going to Australia and back. 10 hours one way. I think it was 10 hours one way, because you've got to get up, and then you've got to go to the airport, and you've got to be there 3 hours early, or whatever, 2.5, 3 hours early. Then you've got a 3-hour plane ride to get to get over to Aussie. Then you've got a bus ride. Then you've got to go through customs, and then you've got a bus ride to the hotel as well. So, and I think we saw this with Perth. Perth also struggled, trying to get their head around how do we keep the players fresh and fit for when they actually come game time. So I think there were probably a lot of lessons learned this year around that, and hopefully they can find some ways of offsetting that next year, because that travel, it must take a toll. When you're going week in, week out, or at least fortnightly to and from the east coast of Australia, it's got to be it's got to have some effect.
Yeah, how could it not? It's a what did they do when they were in Australia for several weeks? Did they just like powwow at one place, or Holly, do you know the ins and outs of that one?
I believe they set up sort of like a base camp in on the Gold Coast. So I think they played the match in Sydney, went to the Gold Coast, played the match in Brisbane, went back to the Gold Coast, then came down for Unite Round. And I think that kind of thing definitely helps, because it's not just the flight itself, it's also the fact that it's international travel. So you have to go through immigration and customs every time. It adds a lot of load. But I mean, that's just kind of how it is. And you'd think the club would be used to working through that, because the men's team have been doing that for 17, 18 years, however long we've been going on for.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. Anything else? What needs to happen for next year, next season? Anything else on that topic?
I guess not really anything that we haven't said. I would be re-signing probably a reasonable majority of the squad. We need to look at obviously the visa players and how many of those we can or do want to keep. I think we all agree there's probably 2 or 3 that we would definitely keep if we could. And then again, getting a squad in reasonably early. We don't want to be leaving it too late, so we can get in and have a decent pre-season. Keep to the same coaching method that we had before in terms of the same style. And I think our expectations are going to be higher next year. You know, this year we probably just would have been happy not to get the spoon. Next year, I think if we don't make the finals, we're all going to be a little bit disappointed.
That's quite right. Jonathan?
Okay, so I've said this a couple of times recently, and that is that, there's a couple of clubs in the A-League that are a little bit rocky at the moment. And there's one club in particular whose temperature and climate is actually quite similar to Wellington. So if I was Paul Temple and, David Domenech, I would be putting out an email now to Michelle Heyman to say, hey, come and play in Wellington. Wellington's like Canberra. It can be cold, it can be rainy, it can be windy. It's on the same latitude. We need an out-and-out striker who can score goals alongside Mariana, whoever we've got. Michelle, please, come and play for Wellington. We'd love to have you at Porirua Park.
Again, that combination of Speckmaier and Heyman, the league just would not be prepared for that combination.
We're just going to cover your what's your favourite next moment and least favourite next moment of the season. I will go first. I think it is the 3-0 win over Western Sydney Wanderers. It was the second round. It was so emphatic. And we won some silverware. And the players were so stoked. And they came over and celebrated with us. And we got this beautiful, beautiful photo of us with the Sister City trophy. I think that was definitely my highlight of the season, even though it was so early. My least favourite moment, and I actually just want to pick 2, is those sliding door sort of moments where something probably should have gone our way and didn't. So the frustration at that handball that wasn't called away to Raw, that really blatant one, that could have been a point for us, could have made the difference. And actually more than a moment, I think losing at Unite Round, having that home match that was supposed to be a home match and then playing it at Unite Round in Sydney and losing, those are quite possibly 3 points that are we missed out on and desperately needed. Who wants to go next? Jonathan, favourite and least favourite moment or bit about the season?
I think my most favourite bit was when I was at Go Media Stadium and I was there with Holly and Dean in the Yellow Fever. And that was the match where Zoe McMeekin came out and she got her first run for the season and she had an absolute blinder. And I had Blake, so one of the guys is at home and he's messaging me on Messenger going, I can hear you on the TV. Because I was just going, Zoe! I was just giving it stink. That was fantastic. The low light, probably for me, I think I would have to say it was when Marisa got injured, and just more generally the number of ACLs that have been gone, both here in the A-League, but also just in football in general. It's a crazy, it's just crazy, and so So hopefully someone can figure out how to reduce that. Ryan,
As I was saying whilst on mute, there were so many moments in the season that were positive that could be mentioned. I mean, I feel like Wynnum's goal against Perth, I feel was a highlight, at least for me, and that given how this season, last season, hasn't really been the most ideal, and I mean that lack of game time up until like round 18 against Melbourne Victory, which was like 279 minutes prior to round 18, and the fact that she scored against Perth and the celebration, which was very reminiscent of the first time she scored in the league and for the Phoenix, I mean, was really nice to see. And on another note with that, it was really good that she got consistent game time towards the back end of the season. And the second favorite moment, because again, both like feel really important, is Mackenzie Barry getting that 50th appearance. I think to make history in any sense, is great. And I feel like there aren't many other players that are more deserving, in my opinion, of reaching that milestone than her. And that, there's a lot of the foundation players, by default in that regard, but I feel like Barry, for the player that she is and, what she brings to the club, I feel like it was very fitting in that regard that she was the first to get to 50. And I feel like to also do it against the same exact opposition you've played against in your first match in the league is very fitting. In terms of least favorite, I think just the ACL injuries in general, I feel like it's just, sucks regardless. To lose the players that the Phoenix did in the way they did just really wasn't great to see. But I think if we're going to exclude that, because again, I feel like that's a very easy, in a good way of like, that's what would definitely be a low light. Probably the result against Adelaide, the 2-1 defeat, given the dominating factor that, again, I think played well, but also to lose the way the Phoenix did just was like, I think of any of the results in the season to have lost, it's just that one was like, really should have won that. And then to lose it the way they did was like, really took the wind out of the sails.
I'll go next. So highlight would be the same as Holly. It's a win against Western Sydney Wanderers, round 2. It was the only win I've seen this season live, so it's bound to be a highlight, right? But it was, again, early in the season, and it's the first time we'd really seen the team play, and they just dominated and destroyed Wanderers. And it was like the first realization is like, we've got a team here. We've got a team. We're going to beat people. We're going to play good football. We played excellent football. Macy Fraser sort of introduced herself, and it's like, okay, why have we not seen this girl play before? She's clearly quality. Speckmeyer scored. It's like, okay, start of her scoring. Mania Elliott was awesome that game. I thought she was going to be better than Fraser. Didn't quite work out for the season, but she really introduced herself for such a young player, and just the joy of watching that was just wonderful. And as Holly said, the excitement that you could see in the playing group, that it was all coming together for them, and they probably couldn't believe it was coming together for them so soon. And they wiped, a team with potentially more resources off the pitch. It was great. It was great, and it carried on being good for a while until it stopped being so great. And low lights, I guess, would be that whole period where we were playing away all the time and we were just losing 2-1. And the Adelaide game that Ryan talks about again, we should have won that and we didn't. And it just seemed we were throwing it away ourselves. We weren't getting beaten. We were beating ourselves somehow. And it was just such a depressing bit of time with the joy that we had earlier in the season, and we hadn't as yet come back to it. So I guess that was my sort of low point in the season, where you just start going, why am I watching this? I'm getting no enjoyment out of this now. It's depressing. Obviously, you keep watching it, and eventually it comes good. But that was one low light.
Yeah, I'll go next. My low light for the season was the massive or loss or kind of without any wins streak that we went on. We went 7 losses in 8 games at one point. It just would have been so demoralizing for the team and really frustrating for us as fans to watch that. And then on a completely different note, highlight Brianna Edwards' penalty save against... I've forgotten who it was against actually, but Riley Foster getting the red card and then Brianna Edwards jumping up straight away, warming up, going on the field with the first touch of the game, saving the penalty, keeping the clean sheet. It was really great to see, and the way that the team crowded around her after that and kind of encouraged her was, I think, it could have been a defining moment in our season if it happened slightly earlier on.
Yeah, this season we were all invested. Like the last 2 seasons, we were like, we knew the cards were stacked against us. We knew we couldn't have visa players. We kind of went, these players are they're doing the best they can. This season, I mean, the highs were like winning, like we were winning, and the lows were obviously losing, and that dichotomy was really, really big this year, where in the past years, 2 years, you kind of went, oh, it's going to be okay. This year we were all crying our hands. So moving on, the A-League women's season in general, real quick, kind of a lightning round. What's your favorite non-Knicks player?
Serena Bolden for Newcastle. I think I know, I don't like it, but imagine if we'd had her playing for the Knicks. And she's basically carried that team everywhere there. She's just been amazing. And it's like, okay, should we have looked to sign her? I think everyone probably should have looked to have signed her.
I'll go Michelle Heyman. I think scoring as many goals as she did in the Canberra side that was underperforming is always a great achievement. And for a Canberra side that are struggling for the cash at the moment and are facing the risk of no longer being a football club, and just to stay as consistent as she did across the whole season, I think is a great achievement.
Ditto for me, coming out of retirement. I know this is a progressive story and she's made the Matildas. The A-League was a massive part of that journey.
For me, I picked the Jets before the season started to win the whole league, so I'm just picking the whole Jets team. Melina Ayres, Lara Gooch, Serena Bolden, Chico. Just the Jets are just a joy to watch. But in all seriousness, it would not be a podcast if we didn't do a mention for Izzy Gomez, because Izzy Gomez at the Mariners, she's just had an absolute blinder of a season. And if she's not in the All-Stars team that plays Arsenal, then there's something wrong with the voting system. So there you go, Izzy. There's your shout out. It wouldn't be a podcast if you didn't get a mention.
Yeah, and I'll go quickly. Heyman, I mean, to do what she did, to make history, break records, and that in a side that very good on like paper, but didn't necessarily get the results and that, to do what she did this season, absolutely unbelievable. And with Izzy, outstanding in the midfield for the Mariners, really integral to how their season has gone.
I'd have to agree. Actually, Michelle Heyman, with that moment of scoring her 100th dub goal, that was really good at Unite Round. And Izzy Gomez, as much as I resent her playing well against us, it is what it is.
So just one last question, one last thought. What do you guys think about, the entire season and the future? One last bit, everyone.
It's been so up and down, but I can't wait for next season. Up the Knicks. The plan next season is we're going to win it or win the double. Have faith. Up the Knicks.
Yeah, I'll go Porirua Park, and just highlighting how amazing it's been to have a venue that kind of suits us and suits the amount of fans we have and the amount of people that are coming to each game, being so close to the field. You can make a lot of noise in Porirua Park. It's just amazing. And I think if we can get a stadium like that for the men, sorry to mention the men, it would be great.
For me, I guess Denise touched on this. This is almost like the first proper season that the Phoenix have played, where we've been playing on a level playing field, and we can actually judge them on how they're doing against other teams properly, rather than going, "Well, they did well, they tried their hardest," and the team's really stood up, and we finished, mid-table. We could have done better. We played some really, really good football. We've discovered some really nice players. We've got a base for the future. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next season.
I think for me, let's recruit well, and let's keep the off the field stuff kind of more of a light, bright, no drama kind of thing. I again don't know what happened, but coincidentally at the same time we got a little stuck in the mud.
Ryan?
All right, I'll go quickly. I mean, just if Wellington can recruit well, and that can recruit well, start the season well, be consistent, and continue to feed off the atmosphere at home and get results away, then not only are they going to make finals, but it really isn't silly or out of the question that they could go all the way. If they, some luck might need to be there, but again, luck, you always need a bit of luck in that. But I think you recruit well. There's already players there that I think are premiership caliber footballers. So do the things that probably needed to be done better this season. Keep the mindset and the promising platform and brand of football. And honestly, the sky is the limit for the Phoenix, and the double is not out of the question.
Very cool. Final thought from me. We've got one more season before a real football team comes into the A-League in Auckland FC. If you're listening to this at home, I'm just getting the evils from Holly right now. Plus something else. No, actually, my final thought is, as like everyone said, if we can build on how we've gone this year. Yeah, looking back, when I think back to one of the first in that first season, we did a couple of interviews with the young players, with Denise, myself, and Blake, and like one of them was with Mackenzie Barry, and we spoke to a very, very young Kate Taylor and a very, very young Brianna Edwards, and now 3 years later, seeing them as young women and who are really developing into their game, who have really matured into being fine soccer players. There's just so much to look forward to next season. For the Knicks, Porirua Park, let's up the Knicks. So it'll be an interesting off season, and we'll see how we go. But so this is our final episode, our final recording of our wrap up of this season. So we're at 90 minutes plus. The referee's just about to blow the whistle on full time. So we'll call it there. Thanks for joining us. It's been a fantastic season. 22 rounds of football. There's still, I think it's 4 more to go till we find out the champion. So stick with it, and hopefully next year our Knicks will be there in the hunt. So from all of us here at Fly to the Knicks and the little corner of yellow, thank you for your time. And mā te wā, see you again come October 2024 when we go again.